Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Legacy Leaders. Today, I'm joined by Rakesh Govind. He is a professor of chemical engineering at the University of Cincinnati. He also is the founder of Next Gen Septic. I've had a chance to talk with Rakesh. He is a rather brilliant individual with an interesting background and probably one of the more interesting businesses I've ever had a chance to run across. So, without further ado, I'm going to give the microphone and camera over to him. Let him introduce himself and tell us his story. So, Rakesh, the microphone and camera are yours, sir. Tell us your story.
Thank you. So, my name is Rakesh Govind, as mentioned, and I'm a professor of chemical engineering. I've been working in water treatment for the last 3 decades, and I've guided a lot of projects and students and so forth, funded by the Environmental Protection Agency, which is also located in Cincinnati, Ohio. My passion is water, and I'm concerned about the fact that fresh water on the planet is running out. So I founded this company in 2018 with the intent of basically creating a decentralized system, essentially to treat wastewater. And I believe that wastewater is not waste, it's actually water. And we want to be able to reuse the water because if we don't, the world will run out of fresh water. It's already running out of fresh water in many parts of the world. It's going to happen no matter where you are, living. It's a global, thing that is going to happen,
Easy.
and it's going to happen on a global scale. It's going to happen in the next decade. So it's not something that's 100 years away. So the way we've been looking at wastewater is essentially treating it, shoving it down into the sewer lines. It goes to a treatment plant and eventually ends up in the ocean, and that water doesn't come back. So the groundwater table is declining on a global scale, and it has been declining over the past 4 or 5 decades and will continue to decline. There's no coming back in this case. So water is not being put back where it came from, and that is what we are trying to achieve in my company.
Okay. So, very different perspective than I would imagine most people have grown up knowing. So, walk me through how is it that you started the company? I understand water is your passion, which is an insane statement. But if you think about how you've done this business, it makes complete sense because you're taking a completely different paradigm shift look at how we've treated water for decades, if not centuries. And now you have a different way of doing it. So, explain. What is it that Next Gen Septic does that hasn't been done before? And in that context, I believe you're going to get a chance to tell us how beneficial your process is compared to the old methodology. So walk us through what's different about what you do and what makes it so unique that it's going to be revolutionary in the scheme of how we treat water in the future.
Right. So I think that we've been taking water for granted. Water is one commodity that we need in order to survive. It's not, it's a necessity. And everybody needs water, whether you're rich or poor, doesn't matter. So the way we've been treating water is that, and there are two ways in which we've been doing this. Of course, in major cities across the globe, including the United States, we have taken the wastewater, we have put in long sewer lines under the ground, and they've been laid since 1920s, 30s, 40s, and so forth. And these sewer lines take the massive flow of now combined wastewater from houses into a single treatment plant or multiple treatment plants. And typically, when they get these millions of gallons of water, in Chicago, it's billions. When they get these billions of gallons of water coming down the pike, they treat it, of course, and then they put it somewhere. And the only place they can put it is into a creek or into a river, and that ends up in the ocean. And that makes salt water. As you know, 96% of water on the planet is salt water, and we cannot drink it. We cannot use it for agriculture. We really have no use for salt water. So, what we need is fresh water. So, what we've been doing is basically putting the water into the ocean. And this water comes from the ground. So, we've been taking this less than 1% of groundwater and putting into 96% of salt water, and it never comes back to the same amount.
Mm.
It never regenerates the groundwater table. Now, 26% of US population has been living on a septic tank. That is the other way of treating wastewater, where we don't have a sewer line connection. And the septic tank is as primitive as you can get. Because what it does very little, of course, but what it does is it takes the solids, separates it from the liquid, and the liquid goes to the land where it is put on the surface of the ground, and essentially it is treated by the bacteria that is in the soil. Now, the problem with that approach is that those fields get clogged over time because they form a biomat. The bacteria grows, making a biomat, and that stops the field from percolating. So fields are getting clogged all over the country. Right now, my estimate is in 2014, I'm sorry, 2014, they did a survey, they did a census, and in the census, there was a question of, is your septic field clogged? So they found that in 2014, there were about 2 million septic fields that were clogged in the United States. There were
Wow.
330,000 of them in Ohio. Now, what happened was, this is 2014 now, today's 2025. So many decade or so later, we might have 5 million or 7 million fields that are clogged. Now, once your field gets clogged, you really have very little option. You either dig it out and replace it and wait for 1 year for the salt to settle down. And during that 1 year, you have to pump out your tanks. It's an
Mm.
expensive proposition. Just digging out the field and replacing it with fresh soil is about $20,000 to $30,000, and most homeowners are not going to be able to afford it. So what happens is these fields are remaining clogged, and those houses have no value. They cannot be sold. If you try to sell your house and the real estate agent comes to your house and checks out the field and says the field is clogged, you can't sell your house. You have to repair it. Or you have more land, and very few people have extra land to build a second
Mm.
field. Now, the reason the fields are getting clogged much faster than before is because we have microplastics in the wastewater. We are consuming microplastics now. And these pieces of plastic, less than 5 microns, are coming out in the septic tank, going to the field, and they're basically covering up the ground. And as the plastic pieces fill up the pores of the ground, the soil in this case, the water is not going to percolate now, and the field gets clogged. So now fields are getting clogged much faster than otherwise. And now this is going to be a massive problem. And then this wastewater that doesn't go into the ground now from these houses that have clogged fields, the water comes to the ground, to the surface of the ground, and the dog runs into it, or your children run into it. They come back, they bring E. coli into the house, and they put it on your sofa and on your carpets. And then
Mm.
you think, why am I falling sick so often? It's not the allergies, it is the E. coli coming into the house,
Wow.
and that is a health hazard actually. So we have massive number of houses in the United States, massive number of people living under a health hazard condition right now. That is what we have in a septic tank, and that is 26% of US population. What we are doing is that we can actually take the septic tank, as long as it's not leaking, and we can retrofit it to become a more advanced treatment system. And once it becomes more advanced, then essentially the water coming out is not treated. It's no longer requiring any treatment. And this water can be used for irrigation of your lawn, irrigation of your plants, and it can be reused. And then if you use it for irrigation of your soil, for example, like your lawn, it goes back in the ground where it came from. So we are promoting this decentralized approach. And we have realized now, after so many years, over 7, 8 decades of treating wastewater using sewer lines, is that the sewer line concept, the centralized treatment concept, was the worst blunder of
Mm.
mankind. Worst blunder of mankind, because we didn't realize in 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s is that these sewer lines are taking the water from the ground and converting into the ocean, salt water, and it's not going to come back. We are depriving the ground of water at unprecedented rates. Now, what happens is the water goes down in the ground, deeper and deeper in the ground, it becomes anoxic. It gets devoid of oxygen and starts dissolving other things in the soil that it wouldn't have dissolved when the level was at 30 feet or 50 feet. So when it gets to 1,000 feet or 1,200 feet in the ground, it starts dissolving arsenic. We are seeing arsenic in groundwater
Wow.
in Arizona, for example. Now we have to remove arsenic, which we can do, by the way, but now it raises the price of water. The next thing it'll begin to dissolve as it goes deeper is uranium. It becomes radioactive. Now people have to drink radioactive water, or we can remove our uranium also. It gets more expensive. As water gets more and more expensive, and everybody needs water, it's no longer a case of gasoline getting expensive, so you can take the bus or do a ride share. No, it's water. You can't live without water. And rich or poor, you need water for survival. Once you cannot use the water, or the water gets too expensive, who's going to pay that bill?
Yeah.
The counties don't have money, the states don't have the funding, the feds don't have the money, and the money involved is not small. It's huge. The problem is, what is the land going to be worth? Farmers cannot farm because there's no water there. They'll have to move. So what's going to happen is that it is going to lead to basically water refugees, what we call water refugees. People, millions of people, not maybe in the United States, but maybe in other countries, in Asia, for example, which is highly populated, we're going to have massive amounts, millions of people moving from the land because there is no value in the land. There's no water left there. They cannot farm.
Hmm.
That land is useless. And these refugees will have to be accommodated somewhere. Now, we have seen by COVID-19 that when something bad happens around the globe, it comes back to the United States too. So even though it's not going to happen here right away, although we are also going down the same one-way street, we will also reach the end sooner or later. But other countries will reach the end much faster than us.
Crazy.
But as we have seen, when the massive refugee crisis arises, not because of wars, not because of ideological differences, not because of anything else, but because of lack of water. When massive amount of people have to move and it puts political instabilities in other countries, it's going to come back to haunt us, no matter where you are,
Yeah.
like COVID-19. So we're going to see an unprecedented crisis brewing around the globe in countries maybe that are next to us, in highly populated countries. Number one, it happened before it happens to us, but it's going to affect us in a negative fashion. So we have been taking water for granted. We cannot keep doing what we were doing. The last thing I want to mention is that what is the problem with sewer lines? Well, we have laid sewer lines from 1920s to 1970s and 80s. These lines are very expensive to maintain, extremely expensive. To give an idea, in the city of Cincinnati, which is not a major town in the United States, our cost of repairing old sewer lines is $10 billion over 10 years. 10 billion with a
Wow.
B. Now,
Keith,
now we
this
don't
okay.
have the 10 billion. The counties in Cincinnati don't have $10 billion over 10 years to repair those sewer lines. If we keep putting more sewer lines, which we intend to do, because that is the way that we've been treating wastewater, it's going to make a bigger cost for future generations. We're going to leave
Unreal.
behind a legacy of huge cost of maintenance that we cannot afford. So my idea is that we should promote decentralized treatment, not using septic tanks, but using advanced treatment systems. And these systems are highly advanced. They can communicate with each other. We have communication capabilities, just like the iPhone right now that I'm talking to you through. We have
Hmm.
communication capabilities. These systems can relay alarms at a distance to maintenance providers, so homeowners don't have to bother with repair. So we have that capability right now. We have Wi-Fi, and we have telemetry systems and so forth that we can install. But the decentralized approach, industries have to learn that they need to treat the water locally, right at the
Hmm.
exit of their right within the premises of the plant, and reuse the water within the plant. That is the key. That is the decentralized approach that we have to adopt. Otherwise, the world will run out of fresh water.
So what is it that next gen septic does that is so different than what is out there today?
So what NextGen Septic does is that we have developed a low-cost retrofit system where we can take a septic tank that's not leaking, for example, and retrofit it. So we don't have to dig it out. We don't have to throw it away. We can retrofit the existing tank with our technology that puts clean water into the field. And once clean water goes in there, the bacteria that is in the soil eats up the dead bacteria, and the soil and the field opens up. So number one, we can make the fields percolate again. Now, the field is clogged because of microplastics, then we can treat the water, and the water can be reused for irrigation purposes and so forth. So we are promoting the fact that it's not really a good idea to shove the water down the sewer lines at a distance and then forget about it, and then it never comes back from the ocean. That is the
Mm.
standard way that we have done this. And this is going to pose a major issue around the globe.
So next gen septic, by treating the water locally, you're
Yes,
creating a local loop of fresh water that, for lack of a better word, doesn't run out, right? You're using
exactly.
the current supply, whatever it get consumed, treated, brought back locally. It doesn't leave the area through a centralized sewer system, eventually reaching rivers and then eventually into the ocean. Is
Exactly.
that the
And,
best way to
and,
explain it?
and,
Okay.
and, and the water can be used for irrigation. Once it is treated, it can be brought back into the house in the toilets. It can be reused for other purposes, and that reduces the net consumption of water. Remember, the per capita consumption of fresh water is what we're trying to reduce.
And so what about drinking water?
Well, the drinking water also comes from the ground most of the time. And
Okay.
one of the problems with failed septics, one of the problems with with the septic tanks that are not working is that we are contaminating the groundwater table, and that table is what people are living on. So it's
Okay.
creating more health hazard for other people as well.
What I was looking, I just want to clarify. When I
Mhm.
have your next gen septic and I create this local closed water system, you said bring water back into the house for toilets, for irrigation, but I can still drink it. I can cook with it, right?
Yes, we can purify it.
Okay.
We have in Texas, for example, we have what are called DPR, direct potable reuse. That means the water can be brought back, treated to a high standard. Now, this is a higher standard than putting in the ground, and we can make it drinkable. And that is the ultimate reuse of
Okay.
water.
Okay. So you've been doing this since 2018.
Yes.
Um, what's it like building a business on something so technologically engaged, with such a different look at what a current problem is, but the current problem has been created over decades. How do you break into that market? How do you tell people that your value proposition is worth spending money on? Because if I remember right, when we first talked, you were explaining one of the companies saved a ton of money by being able to install your system because they created this local closed
Yes.
loop, but it saved them a ton of money. Explain how the process works for you.
Yeah, so for example, there are many companies that use a lot of water. I mean, refineries, for example, use 9 million gallons of water per day.
Mm.
So
Mm.
there's a lot of water being used. Now, of course, they use it once, and then they pretty much throw once it is used up, they discard it into the treatment plants, into the local treatment plants. The issue now is that if they can save that water, reuse the water, they can save a huge amount of money. That is their water bill that they're using. They don't have to pump as much water. The water is not going to run out
Hmm.
where they're located because the water runs out, then they're done. The
Hmm.
company cannot operate, the refinery cannot operate, or whatever the company is that cannot operate in that location. So it's a much more expensive proposition for them to basically have to shut down the company or shut down the process. It is much easier for them to put local treatment capacity that they can bring the water back. They can use it for even non-potable reuses, that they can for cooling, for example. They can do that, and they don't have to discard that fresh water that they've got from the ground. So their net consumption can go down. It can save them money because the water bills that they're paying 9 million gallons of water per day is not going to be that low cost. But secondly, they can exist longer in that location because now they're putting the water back where it came from, and they are not going to run out of water, or they don't would not have to treat the water to a higher standard, which will also cost them a huge amount of money.
Yeah. That's it's amazing to think how much technology is involved in water, right? We
Yes,
we to your point, we take it for granted. We
yes,
expect it to be there, and we
yes,
don't know all the details behind the scenes that make it work. So when we're
yes.
talking about next gen septic and its capabilities, I just made a note here. It's from a combination of cost savings and efficiency and increase in productivity. There's such a real reason that any company would want to deal with next gen septic. I would imagine municipalities would really like to take advantage of what you have. What probably is the biggest challenge, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think this is much like any other technological advancement that comes in to disrupt a standard of century-old technology.
Yeah.
You see a problem, you create a solution for it. Then your biggest challenge is creating enough awareness so people can adopt it and eventually convert and move over to it. So, in the grand scheme of things, what was the biggest challenge in bringing next gen septic to life?
I think the biggest challenge we have is that we have to convince municipalities and the states as well that this is what they have to do. If they have to have an economy in the state, jobs, industries, and
Hmm.
so forth, the first thing they have to look at, do they have enough water in the ground? Or are they depleting their water in the ground at a rate which is unprecedented? Eventually, their economy will run out. It doesn't matter if you've got chip making factories or if you've got
Hmm.
other types of production going on. They're all going to go out of business because there's no water. They all need water. Even data centers require water now. If you want to put up a data center in your state and bring jobs that way, well, I want to remind you that you need a lot of water. And if you don't have the water, you can't exist. So the most challenging thing we had was convincing the states and convincing municipalities that this is a good idea, that they should move away from the sewer line concept. Right now, most municipalities will tell a homeowner, if they're building a new house, hey, can you connect to a sewer line? And we like you to connect to a sewer line. That's their first priority. If they
Right.
cannot, for whatever reason, because the sewer line is too far away, it's going to cost them millions, then in that case, they say, oh, then put a septic tank. That's the de facto solution. So either a sewer line connection or a septic tank solution, both of which I'm saying are no good. They are no good. And they should consider advanced treatment. So convincing municipalities,
Hmm.
convincing the local counties, convincing states that this is the only approach that will work for them in the long run if they want to maintain the economy. And stop thinking about, oh well, we will bring in more jobs by opening up more chip factories or data centers or whatever. Think about water. That is the basic commodity you need for economy of the state, for bringing in jobs, for having people living there. And without
It's
that, you have nothing actually.
it's crazy to think again, something that we all take for granted.
Yes.
Um, the running water in your house, yeah, it's great, but we don't think about with the water that leaves the house, right? And what does that mean down the
Right.
road? Because
Right.
eventually this closed loop needs, for lack of a better word, a supply. And if
Yes.
the supply is tainted, it needs to go through a lot of
Right.
treatment and whatever to bring
Right.
back into the house.
Right.
As I'm thinking about all the different challenges you face, and now that you have the business set up, you've been doing it since 2018. Walk us through the end point of your business right now, because if I remember correctly, when we talked, you have a license agreement. So you're not running the business as a CEO. You're the founder of the business, but you have a license agreement. Explain that to the audience so they understand what it is you've done with your business.
So what we have done basically is that we are trying to license this technology to as many other companies as we can. License them out to companies that need water treatment on their premises, for example, and license them out to municipalities or to other companies that can install them in municipalities. Right now, 99.9% of the companies are catering to centralized treatment, basically, and everybody else left to a septic tank, essentially. What we are saying is, hey, centralized treatment is not a good idea. It is the worst blunder of mankind, actually. And we need to start thinking about decentralized treatment. So, and we alone as a company cannot put this on a global scale. We're not big enough to do this on a global scale. So we have to license it out to other companies in other countries, especially in highly populated countries in Asia, for example. They have to rethink their methodology of whether they should follow this Western model of a septic of a centralized treatment, or they should rethink about the fact that they're running out of water faster than anybody else. And
Right.
we are willing to license the technology out to other companies in other countries as well as in this country in order to promote this idea, basic concept, because water is a necessity and it is to be done on a global scale. It's not a US problem, it's a global problem.
Yeah. And you said everything comes back like we've recognized in the pandemic.
Yes.
Eventually, no matter where it starts, it comes back around. So we need to be cognitive of the idea
Yes.
that whatever we do here is eventually going to roll over all the way around and come back and kick us in the tail. So
Yes. Yes.
I'm interested to learn what's your lesson with this business? What's the one thing if you had a chance to tell a brand new business owner, what's the lesson that you've learned putting next gen septic together that you wish you would have learned early and you'd like to pass on to somebody else?
I think that one of the lessons is that if you want to change the infrastructure, you want to change the basic way in which business is being done. For example, in the case of water, is what we are talking about, is that you need to have enough funding to be able to do this on a massive scale. You need to convince municipalities all over the country, all over
Mhm.
the world, actually, and convince even this, different entities that are responsible for water that this is the only way to go. This is the approach they must take. And they don't have enough time. It's not going to happen the next 100 years. As I said, it's going to happen the next decade. So essentially, you need to have enough basic funding to be able to convince them before you
Mhm.
introduce the technology. What we did was we brought the technology forward, and then we hit a brick wall against municipalities, against the different states who said, no, 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 we're just going to allow a septic tank. And then we had to tell them, no, a septic tank is no good. When the field gets clogged, then what does happen? Then what does the homeowner do? You've got already got millions of fields clogged in your state. What are you going to do now? You're going to create more of that problem. This is the brick wall that we have been trying to propagate.
Hmm.
We're trying to break down actually, and this has been a challenging thing for us.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, the way I'm looking at this is the standard has been set for
Yeah.
decades. The
Decades.
standard has been set and it's inherent and it's just passed down from one generation to the next. This is how we do it.
Yes.
And what's unique about your business idea and what you've been able to do for the last 7 years is really create a business that has a value proposition that's so unique and so different, but it's running up against the standard that we've all known. So your value needs to be bigger than the resistance to the change. And the messaging behind it is getting people to recognize that this needs to happen sooner rather than later,
Yes.
because eventually we're going to
Yeah.
run out of supply. And
Yeah.
it's an interesting perspective. But I think from a lesson on the business side of things, Rakesh, what this really points to is regardless of how the standard has been accepted for as long as it's been accepted, if there's a better way of doing things, let's investigate that better way and bring it forward so people can recognize, oh, that's how we've always done it, and it's not as good as what's possible. Let's move forward with what's possible and let's change our perspective. It's the hardest thing, and I'm glad you recognized that and told the audience the hardest thing to do is change people's set minds that there isn't a better way to do it because this is the way we've always done it. And those words in business are devastating, right? This is the way we've always done it. Well, then you're never going to grow. You're not going to advance. You're not going to try and risk something to be better. You're always going to do it the same old way. And eventually things are going to pass you by. I don't want a country to have water refugees. I don't want a country to have a devastating loss of an economy because they're not taking a look at what's possible with new technology. So I really appreciate you bringing this to the forefront. What is it that you would say you'd tell a young entrepreneur when they're starting a business, other than the funding piece? Because I think we all kind of get behind that. Yeah, I need a lot. I need money to start my business. What is it that you would suggest is the best way a young business owner should really focus their attention?
I think that basically they should focus their attention on propagating their message across wide audience. I think that marketing the basic idea is one way in letting people know that this crisis is brewing and it's coming behind them. They don't see it right now, and when the crisis hits people, they're going to realize that they need this thing.
Yeah.
Eventually, when if the cost of water goes up tomorrow morning in a given location, people are going to wake up and say, wait a minute, why am I paying $1,000 a month for water? Sadly, the way they've been using water, that's where they've been using it. Now it's $1,000 bill instead of $100 bill. When that happens, and it's going to hit them, at that point, it is going to be too late for them to get
Yeah.
up and make a change. So this is brewing behind their backs. People don't know that. And I think that the sooner they realize, and our business needs to realize that this is going to be a good idea to propagate. This is a good area to be in because water is needed. Whether the economy is doing good or bad doesn't matter. Stock
Yeah.
market going up and down doesn't matter. You need water. Water is the basic commodity you need. Good times or bad times, and everybody needs water. Every person, living person or plant and animal needs water. So
Yeah.
it's a commodity you need, and this is a good business to be in. Actually,
That's a very good lesson, a very good point as well. Rakesh, I want to thank you. Believe it or not, we've been on conversation for more than 30 minutes. So
Okay.
I want to thank you for being on the program,
Thank you.
enlightening the audience with some new insight towards what is going on in our water supply, but also giving us a nice lesson on finding a problem, creating a solution, finding the best way possible to message and get people to understand and adopt what you're doing. So thank you for that. Great lessons learned. Really look forward to what's going to come next for Next Gen Septic. So thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you.
Everybody, we'll see you all on the next
Thank you.
episode.
Thanks, sir.